Hey guys, and welcome back. Tonight we step into the glittering, dangerous world of the Elizabethan court. It was a world of poetry, power, and magnificent fashion, and at its very center was a figure who seemed almost more than human. Queen Elizabeth I, Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, an icon of power and divine authority, her image carefully crafted in 1,000 portraits. But behind the priceless jewels and the magnificent gowns was a very human woman, living by the standards of her time, a time of different ideas about cleanliness, health, and the human body. And those standards and the reality of her personal hygiene will horrify you. So, before we enter the Queen's private bedchamber, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these quiet journeys into the past. As always, it is a pleasure to see where you are all listening from, so let me know in the comments. All right, dim the lights, let the world outside fade away, and let us step back in time. The darkness of your chamber is absolute. It is the deep, dreamless, and profoundly cold darkness that comes in the final hours before a winter dawn. You are asleep, buried under a mound of woolen blankets, your body clinging to a fading memory of warmth. And then it is shattered. A sharp, frantic, and insistent knocking on your heavy oak door rips you from your sleep. It is not the gentle tap of a servant bringing warm ale. It is an alarm, a summons. Your heart lurches in your chest, a familiar jolt of anxiety that is the daily bread of anyone who serves a queen. "My lady!" a young voice whispers urgently from the other side of the door. "My lady, you are called for." You throw the heavy blankets back, a terrible sacrifice, and the frigid air of the room rushes in to attack you. It is a physical shock, a cold so damp and penetrating, it feels like being plunged into icy water. You stumble from your bed, your bare feet recoiling from the cold, rush-strewn floor, and you unlatch the door. A young maid stands there, her face pale and frightened in the flickering light of the single candle she holds. She does not look you in the eye. "My lady," she says, her voice a trembling whisper. Her Majesty is awake. She calls for her ladies. The Spanish ambassador is to be received at court before noon. The words hang in the cold air, each one a weight of immense significance. The Spanish ambassador, the representative of your great rival, of King Philip, the most powerful and dangerous man in the world. An audience with him is not a pleasantry. It is a battle. It is a crucial moment of statecraft, a performance where every detail, from the Queen's health to the richness of her gown, will be noted, analyzed, and reported back to the Spanish court. And you are a lady of the Queen's bedchamber. You are one of the handful of high-born women who have been granted the immense privilege and the terrible burden of access to the Queen's most private world. Your duty is not to advise on matters of state, but to prepare the very instrument of that state, the Queen's own body. A cold, professional focus descends upon you, chasing away the last vestiges of sleep. Your mind, even as you are shivering in your thin linen night shift, becomes a ledger of urgent, critical tasks. "Help me dress," you command the maid, your voice already the firm, quiet tone of authority you must wear at all times in this court. The process is swift, functional. You do not have the luxury of the Queen's elaborate rituals. A clean chemise, a simple woolen kirtle laced tightly, a reminder of the day's rigid posture. A dark, practical gown over it. As you dress, your mind is a whirlwind of planning, a general preparing for a campaign. The bath is out of the question. It is a massive, hours-long undertaking, a logistical nightmare of hauling and heating dozens of buckets of water. And there is simply no time. The Queen's teeth, they will need special attention today. Extra rubbing with the abrasive powder. The choice of wig will be critical. The large imperial one with the pearls, you decide. The gown must be the black velvet with the silver embroidery, a vision of stark, intimidating power. You are ready. You take your own candle and you step out into the sleeping corridors of Whitehall Palace. It is a strange, liminal time. The night is over, but the day has not yet begun. The palace is a labyrinth of cold, dark passages. The great tapestries on the walls are just huge, colorless shapes, their vibrant stories asleep in the gloom. The only sound is the distant, lonely cry of a watchman on the battlements, and the faint, frantic clatter from the kitchens, where the cooks have been at work for hours. As you approach the Queen's privy chamber, the atmosphere changes. The silence here is deeper, more profound. It is a silence of reverence and fear. You see other figures in the darkness, the other senior ladies of the bedchamber, all summoned from their sleep, their faces pale and serious in the candlelight. Two massive yeomen of the guard, their red uniforms a splash of color in the gloom, stand like statues on either side of the great, carved door that leads to the Queen's bedchamber. They do not look at you, but you feel their presence, the silent, intimidating guardians of the threshold. You have arrived at the border between the public world of the court and the secret, private, and far more dangerous world of the Queen. You know that on the other side of that door is not just a monarch, but an aging woman, her body subject to the same pains and decays as any other, but whose every physical flaw is a potential political weakness. Your job is to erase those flaws. Your job is to transform the mortal woman into the divine icon. You take a deep breath. The cold air a painful sting in your lungs. You smooth the front of your gown and arrange your own face into a mask of serene, unshakable competence. You give a slight, almost imperceptible nod to the captain of the guard. He understands. He raps his knuckles once on the great oak door. A voice from within grants permission. The door swings open on silent, well-oiled hinges, and you step across the threshold. The long, stressful, and incredibly important day has begun. You step across the threshold into the Queen's private bedchamber, and the world changes. The brutal, honest cold of the stone corridors is instantly replaced by a thick, oppressive, and entirely artificial warmth. A great fire, large enough to roast a small pig, already roars in the chamber's cavernous fireplace, a privilege of majesty. The air is heavy and close, thick with the smell of wood smoke, of the dogs that sleep on rugs by the hearth, of old fragrant herbs, and the faint, cloying, musky scent of a perfume that has soaked into the very tapestries and bed hangings. The room is a fortress of opulent clutter. Heavy velvet curtains, embroidered with gold thread, seal the great windows against the morning light. A massive, curtained four-poster bed, a piece of architecture in itself, dominates the space. And seated in a great, high-backed chair directly before the fire is the Queen. She is not the icon from the portraits. Not yet. In the warm, dim light of the fire, you see an aging woman. She is wrapped in a heavy dressing gown lined with fur. Her face is bare of its famous white mask, and in its nakedness, it is a landscape of anxieties. It is pale, wrinkled, and etched with the deep lines of a lifetime of worry and command. Her famous red hair is thin and faded, covered for now by a simple linen nightcap. She looks old, tired, and deeply irritable. She is your queen, the most powerful woman in the world, and your charge. You and the other ladies of the bedchamber perform a deep, silent curtsy. She does not acknowledge it. She is staring into the flames, her long, pale fingers restlessly tapping on the arm of her chair. The Spanish dog arrives before noon, she says, her voice a low, gravelly rasp, not looking at you. And I feel stale. The damp of this winter has settled in my very bones. A bath. I should have a bath. Her words send a silent, invisible wave of pure panic through you and the other ladies. A bath. On a day like today, it is an impossibility, a demand born of royal whim and a complete disregard for the realities of time and labor. You, of course, do not say this. You simply bow your head. Your Majesty's wish is our command. But in your mind, you see the truth of what a royal bath entails. It is not a simple affair. It is a massive, logistical military operation that takes half a day to prepare and requires the coordinated effort of nearly 100 servants. First, the water. The tub, a great heavy oak cask, would need to be carried up the winding staircases and placed here, in the center of the chamber. Then, the water itself. Dozens and dozens of servants would have to form a human chain, a bucket brigade, stretching from the great cauldrons in the kitchens all the way up to these private apartments. They would pass bucket after bucket of steaming hot water, a slow, grueling procession, just to fill the great tub. Then comes the preparation of the bath itself. The inside of the rough wooden cask must be lined with sheets of the finest, clean linen to protect the queen's delicate skin from the indignity of a splinter. A hot water would then be perfumed. Great bunches of expensive herbs, rosemary, chamomile, lavender, and baskets of rose petals would be steeped in the water until it became a fragrant, almost medicinal soup. The entire process, from the first order to the moment the queen could step into the tub, would take at least 3 hours. It is an undertaking reserved for moments of great need or ceremony. And it is a practice that the queen's own physicians advise against with a terrible urgency. This is the great central myth of cleanliness. In your time, water is not seen as a friend. You have all heard the sermons of the doctors. They believe that to submerge the body in hot water is to open the pores, to soften the skin, and to make the body vulnerable to the corrupt and pestilential vapors that carry disease. The great plagues of the past, they say, were spread by the foolish and excessive bathing habits of a weaker generation. A bath is a dangerous medical procedure, a necessary evil to be undertaken perhaps once a month, as the Queen famously does. A habit that marks her as both exceptionally clean and daringly modern in the eyes of her court. To bathe on the very day that she must face the Spanish ambassador would be, in the eyes of her counselors, an act of sheer strategic madness, an open invitation for a Spanish sickness to creep into the pores of the English monarch. You know all of this, and you know you must be the one to steer the Queen away from this impossible, dangerous whim. You step forward, your expression one of deep, thoughtful concern. Your Majesty is wise to desire such a purification before this great meeting. You begin, your voice a soft, diplomatic murmur. But the hour is late. The ambassador will be here by noon, and the preparations for a bath worthy of you would consume the entire morning. You pause, letting the practical reality of the situation settle. Perhaps, you continue, a more invigorating approach would serve you better. A thorough rubbing with warm, scented cloths to stimulate the blood, and the application of the finest perfumes from Florence. We can make you feel as fresh as a May morning, and we can do it without opening the royal person to the foul humors of the air on this cold, damp day. You are speaking her own doctor's language back to her, wrapping your refusal in the guise of medical concern. The Queen is silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. She is not a fool. She knows you are right. She knows the logistics are impossible. Her demand for a bath was a test, a complaint, a simple expression of her own discomfort. Very well, Bess, she finally says. Using your familiar name, with a sigh of weary resignation. "No bath, but see to it that I do not smell like an old woman. The Spanish have noses like bloodhounds. I will not give their ambassador a single weakness to report back to his master." "You shall smell like the goddess Diana herself, your majesty," you reply, bowing your head. The first crisis of the day has been averted. The impossible, dangerous bath is forgotten. You turn to the other ladies, and with a series of quiet, efficient gestures, you begin the true, and to a modern mind, far more horrifying hygiene routine of your age. The matter of the bath has been settled. A crisis of logistics and medical theory has been diplomatically averted. You have, for the moment, pleased your queen by both acknowledging her discomfort and steering her towards a more practical and, in the court's opinion, safer course of action. She sits in her great chair by the fire, a fragile truce having been declared with the miseries of the morning. Now, the true, intimate, and often deeply unpleasant work of the royal toilet must begin. The first order of business is a matter of profound political importance, a secret of the state that is kept and managed by you and the other ladies of the bedchamber. It is the matter of the Queen's teeth. You know the source of the problem, for it is a love affair that is known throughout the court. Her Majesty, your Queen, has a deep, passionate, and ruinous love for sugar. In this age, sugar is not a common commodity. It is a breathtakingly expensive luxury, a fine white powder imported at immense cost from the distant, sun-scorched lands of the South. To consume it is a statement of power and wealth. And the Queen, to demonstrate the vastness of England's treasury and her own supreme status, consumes it with a reckless abandon. She eats sugared fruits, she drinks honey-sweetened wine, and she delights in magnificent architectural creations of pure spun sugar called subtleties. Her love for this sweet white poison is a political tool, a way of dazzling foreign dignitaries and demonstrating her immense wealth. But this political tool has waged a disastrous war upon her own body. The price of her sweet indulgence is paid in the currency of her teeth. You have seen the truth that is hidden behind her carefully controlled public smile. You have seen the blackened, decayed ruins of what were once, you are told, her finest feature. It is a source of her secret shame and often of her great pain. And today, with the Spanish ambassador, a man who will notice and report on every tiny flaw, due to arrive, the management of the royal mouth is of paramount importance. You signal to Isabel, the youngest of the maids. She approaches, carrying not a silver platter, but a small, simple wooden box. She opens it. Inside are the tools of Elizabethan dentistry. There is no brush. There is only a small, neatly folded pile of clean, white linen cloths, and a small earthenware pot containing a fine, reddish-brown powder. This is the royal tooth powder. You know its composition well, for you have mixed it yourself. It is a harsh, abrasive concoction, a finely powdered brick dust for scouring, crushed bone for polishing, and a large measure of coarse burnt salt for cleansing. Mixed in with this gritty base are a few more pleasant ingredients: dried, powdered mint and clove, not for health, but to provide a brief, fleeting illusion of a sweet-smelling breath. You take a strip of the clean linen and wrap it tightly around your forefinger. You dip your finger into the reddish-brown powder, coating it in a layer of the gritty, salty mixture. Then you approach the Queen. This is a moment of profound intimacy and trust. To be permitted to place your fingers inside the royal mouth is a privilege granted to only a handful of her most trusted companions. It is a position of honor, and it is a deeply unpleasant task. Your Majesty, you say softly. The Queen, her face a mask of weary resignation, opens her mouth slightly. You lean in, averting your own gaze out of respect, and you begin the work. You gently, but firmly rub your powder-coated finger against the surface of each tooth. The sensation is a gritty, scraping one, the feeling of the abrasive brick dust scouring the enamel. The taste of the salt and the slightly bitter herbs fills the air. In this moment, you are closer to the Queen's physical reality than anyone else in the world. You are face to face with the truth that the portraits so artfully conceal. You see the black decay that models the once white enamel. You see the gaps where teeth have already been lost, a source of her lisping speech. You feel the looseness of a molar under your finger, and you pray to God it does not choose today to finally give way. Your job is not to heal. That is a battle that was lost long ago. Your job is to perform a kind of battlefield maintenance. You are polishing ruins. You are scouring away the surface stains from last night's wine. And you are attempting to impose a temporary, fragrant peace upon a breath that is soured by the slow, sweet rot within. You work for several minutes, your movements practiced and efficient, your face a mask of serene professionalism. You do not allow yourself to flinch. You do not allow yourself to show any sign of the disgust that the sight and the smell might provoke in a lesser courtier. When you are finished, you withdraw your hand. Isabel is there with a silver goblet of watered-down rosewater. The Queen takes it, swishes the liquid in her mouth, and spits it discreetly into a basin held by another maid. She runs her own tongue over her teeth. The surfaces are now smooth, scoured clean of their immediate film. The faint, pleasant scent of clove and mint now temporarily masks the deeper problems. She gives a small nod of grim satisfaction. The ordeal is over. You have successfully managed one of her greatest and most well-known physical flaws. You have ensured that when she speaks to the Spanish ambassador, her words will not be carried on a wave of foul, decaying breath. It is a small, temporary, and deeply unpleasant victory in the endless war of royal presentation. You step back, bowing your head, and you prepare for the next, and far less intimate, stage of the morning's strange rituals. The unpleasant but necessary ritual of the royal teeth is complete. A fragile, temporary freshness has been established. Now you must turn your attention to the rest of the royal person. The Queen's complaint that she feels stale still hangs in the air, a royal command that must be addressed. But the bath, with its immense logistical challenges and its perceived medical dangers, is not an option. You must resort to the true, primary, and almost universally accepted method of daily hygiene for the nobility. You must perform the art of the dry clean. To the modern mind, the concept is a strange one. But you are a woman of the 16th century. You understand the world through the lens of your own time's science and philosophy. You know, as every physician at court will tell you, that the body is a porous and vulnerable thing. Water, especially hot water, is a dangerous element that opens the pores and invites the pestilential humors of the air to invade the body, causing sickness and imbalance. True cleanliness, therefore, is not achieved by washing with something, but by rubbing away something. The primary tool of hygiene is not water, but a clean, dry, and slightly abrasive linen cloth, which is believed to absorb the body's foul vapors and scrub away the grime of the previous day. You give a quiet, practiced signal. 2 junior maids scurry forward. One carries a large, folded stack of fresh, snow-white linen cloths, warmed by the hearth. The other carries a silver bowl filled with a fine, pale, and sweetly fragrant powder made from ground orris root. These are your tools. You and the other senior lady-in-waiting, a formidable woman named Lady Shelton, approach the Queen. With practiced discretion, you help her to your feet and assist her in shrugging off her heavy, fur-lined dressing gown. She stands before the roaring fire in only her long, linen night chemise, a surprisingly frail and human figure in the firelight. The process must be done in stages, with the utmost respect for the royal modesty. Absolute nakedness is an unthinkable vulnerability. You and Lady Shelton begin with her arms. You untie the ribbons at the cuff of her chemise and roll the sleeve up to her shoulder, exposing one of her pale, thin arms to the air. You take one of the large, warmed linen cloths. You fold it into a thick, rough pad, and you begin to rub. This is not a gentle caressing motion. It is a vigorous, almost violent act of friction. You rub the cloth hard against the queen's skin, your movements firm and energetic. You are a gloom, currying a prized but temperamental horse. The goal is to stimulate the blood, to warm the skin, and most importantly, to use the rough texture of the linen to exfoliate, to scrub away the fine layer of sweat, oil, and dead skin that has accumulated. You work methodically, from her shoulder down to her wrist, paying special attention to the elbow and the underarm. The queen stands perfectly still, her face impassive, accustomed to this daily abrasive treatment. When you have finished scrubbing the arm, a junior maid steps forward with the bowl of orris root powder. You take a pinch of the soft, fragrant powder and gently dust it over the queen's now reddened skin. The powder absorbs any lingering moisture or oil, and it weaves behind a faint, clean, violet-like scent. The process is complete for this small section of the royal body. You carefully roll the sleeve of her chemise back down, and you begin the exact same process on the other arm. You work as a team, a well-oiled machine of female servitude. While you are tending to her arms, Lady Shelton is at her feet, performing the same ritual on her legs and feet, uncovering one limb at a time. The work is intimate, physical, and entirely impersonal. In these moments, you are granted a view of the queen that no one outside this chamber will ever see. You see the reality of her aging body, a truth that is so carefully and so masterfully concealed from the world. You see the network of fine, blue veins beneath her thin, pale skin. You see the slight sag of the flesh on her upper arms. You see the old, silvery scar on her shoulder, a relic from a childhood bout of smallpox. You are the keeper of her physical secrets. You know every mole, every blemish, every sign of the relentless march of time upon the body of a woman who has styled herself as a timeless and immortal virgin queen. This knowledge is a heavy burden, a secret that you must carry to your grave. Your job is not just to clean her, it is to know her flaws so that you may better help her to conceal them. You move to her back, untying the laces of her chemise to expose her shoulders and spine. You continue the vigorous, rhythmic rubbing, your own arms beginning to ache with the effort. It is a strange, almost brutal form of intimacy, this act of scouring the skin of your monarch. But it is the very foundation of her day. It is from this raw, red, and powdered state that the great icon of Gloriana will be built. Finally, the ritual is complete. Every accessible part of the queen's body has been subjected to the harsh, purifying caress of the linen cloth. The used cloths, now slightly grimy, are discreetly taken away to be boiled by the laundry maids. The queen's skin is glowing, red and slightly raw from the friction, but it is considered, by the standards of your age, to be impeccably clean. She feels invigorated, the harsh rubbing having stirred her blood and chased away the last of her morning weariness. She gives a small, satisfied nod. The art of the dry clean is complete. The foundation has been laid, not with water, but with linen and friction. Now, the first layer of her armor, the first true defense against the sense of the world, can be applied. The dry clean is complete. The queen's skin, now rubbed to a raw, rosy glow and dusted with fragrant powder, is considered clean by the highest standards of the age. But this is merely a preparatory skirmish in the great daily war against the ever-present enemy of human odor. The body, you have been taught by both priest and physician, is a treacherous vessel, constantly exuding foul vapors and unhealthy humors through the pores of the skin. To be clean, to be pure, is to manage this constant internal decay. And the first, most important, and most powerful weapon in this war is not perfume. It is linen. You are a woman of the Elizabethan court, and you understand a truth that is fundamental to your world. Cleanliness is not a state of the skin, but a state of the shirt. The philosophy is a simple one. The body is a source of corruption. A clean, white linen chemise worn next to the skin is believed to possess an almost magical, porous quality. It acts as a wick, a sponge, drawing the sweat, the oils, and the foul vapors out of the body and trapping them within its own woven fibers. Therefore, true hygiene, the ultimate mark of a refined and noble person, is the ability to change this undergarment every single day. A peasant might wear the same rough wool or homespun tunic for a week, their own sweat and grime becoming a part of their very being. But a queen, a person of almost divine status, must be separated from her own mortal foulness. Her clean chemise is the physical barrier that proves her purity. You see this philosophy in action every single day. It is the foundation of an immense, unseen industry within the palace walls. Far away, in the steamy, chaotic world of the royal laundry, an army of laundresses is engaged in a constant, brutal war of its own. You have seen them at work, red-faced women with arms as strong as a blacksmith's, standing over massive, boiling cauldrons, stirring the royal linen in a caustic soup of lye, soapwort, and yoin. You have seen them beating the wet, heavy fabric against smooth riverstones to drive out the dirt, and then spreading the vast white sheets and chemises over fields of grass, relying on the power of the sun to bleach them to a state of pristine, almost holy whiteness. The simple, clean garment you are about to handle is the end result of a dozen women's back-breaking labor. The time has come to apply this first layer of defense. You and Lady Shelton approach the Queen. With practiced, deferential movements, you help her remove the linen chemise she has worn through the night. It is no longer the crisp, clean garment it was when she put it on. It is soft, slightly rumpled, and it carries the faint, intimate, and unmistakably human scent of the Queen's own body after a night spent in a warm, stuffy bed. You take the garment, fold it discreetly, and hand it to Isabel, who will see that it is immediately dispatched to the laundry for its own violent purification. Then you turn to the great cedar chest where the fresh royal linen is stored. You lift the heavy lid, and a beautiful clean scent wafts out. It is not the scent of perfume. It is the unique, honest, and deeply reassuring smell of truly clean linen in your age. It is the sharp, almost sterile smell of the lye soap, the faint, earthy scent of the sun and the grass it was dried upon, and the clean, woody aroma of the cedar chest itself. This is the smell of purity. You lift out the new chemise. It is a magnificent garment, even for an undergarment. It is made of the finest, almost translucent linen from the Low Countries, a fabric so prized it is almost as valuable as silk. The collar and the cuffs are decorated with intricate blackwork embroidery, a delicate pattern of vines and flowers sewn with fine black silk thread, a small secret piece of artistry that will be hidden all day beneath layers of wool and velvet. You hold the garment up. It is not soft and yielding like a modern shirt. It is crisp, almost stiff, a result of the harsh lye and the sun bleaching. It holds its shape. You and Lady Shelton approach the Queen, and with the gentleness of priests clothing a sacred statue, you help her into the fresh chemise. The sensation for her, you know, is a significant one. The cool, crisp, and slightly abrasive touch of the clean linen against her freshly rubbed skin is a powerful sensory signal. It is the feeling of a new day, of a fresh start. It is the feeling of being clean, of being armored. The linen immediately begins its secret work, standing as a silent, absorbent barrier between her mortal body and the magnificent, priceless gowns that will soon be placed upon it. The queen now stands before the fire, a simple, almost monastic figure in her long, white, and beautifully embroidered linen shift. The first and most important battle in the daily war on scent has been won. The invisible enemy of her own body's humors has been contained, its foul vapors already being drawn into the magical, porous prison of the linen fibers. She is now a clean canvas, a pure foundation. And upon this foundation of simple, honest linen, the great, complex, and deeply deceptive edifice of her public image, the perfumes, the powders, the poisons, can now be constructed. The queen stands in her fresh linen chemise, a stark white figure against the flickering red of the hearth. The first and most fundamental battle of the morning has been won. The clean linen, in its quiet, magical way, is now at work, drawing out the foul vapors of the body, standing as a pristine barrier between the queen's mortal flesh and the magnificent garments to come. But linen is a defensive weapon. It is a shield. To face the Spanish ambassador, a man from a court known for its own opulent displays, the queen needs more than defense. She needs a weapon of offense. She needs perfume. In your age, perfume is not the light, flirtatious, and floral whisper of a garden. It is a heavy, powerful, and deeply serious tool of statecraft. You live in a world that stinks. The city of London, even here in the royal palace of Whitehall, is a place of powerful and often unpleasant odors. The smoke from 1,000 coal and wood fires hangs heavy in the air. The nearby River Thames is a repository of the city's waste, and the great halls of the palace itself, filled with hundreds of courtiers, guards, servants, and dogs, all with their own unique and often unwashed smells, create a thick human miasma. Perfume, therefore, is not a gentle suggestion. It is an act of olfactory warfare. Its purpose is to create an undeniable, sovereign territory of scent around a person of high status. A fragrant bubble that aggressively overpowers and obliterates any unpleasant ambient odors. A powerful perfume is a declaration of power, a sign that you are so wealthy you can afford to smell not of the world, but of a paradise of your own making. Furthermore, it is a form of medicine. The physicians of the court are all in agreement. Disease, the great plague itself, is carried upon foul air, upon a corrupting miasma. A strong, pleasant perfume, therefore, is seen as a kind of aromatic shield, a fragrant armor that can physically ward off the invisible daggers of pestilence. To smell magnificent is to be safe. You, as the lady of the bedchamber, are the queen's chief armorer in this invisible war. You turn to the dressing table, where a collection of small, heavy pots made of silver and carved alabaster are arranged. These are the queen's perfumes. You select the pot for the day. It does not contain a liquid to be sprayed. It contains a thick, heavy, yellowish pomade, a solid perfume made from a base of beeswax and rendered animal fat. But it is the ingredients infused into this base that are the source of its immense power and its almost unbelievable expense. You take a small ivory spatula and scoop out a tiny amount of the pomade. The moment it is exposed to the air, the chamber is filled with a scent so powerful it is almost breathtaking. It is not a simple scent. It is a complex, multi-layered, and deeply animalistic aroma. The most powerful note is musk, a dark, pungent, and almost shockingly primal scent that comes from the glands of a rare deer found only in the distant, snow-covered mountains of the Himalayas. It is a scent of pure animal power, and it costs more per ounce than gold. Woven into the musk is the strange, contradictory scent of civet, a foul-smelling paste taken from a cat-like creature in the hot lands of Africa and India. The paste itself is unpleasant, but when diluted in the pomade, it transforms, blooming into a strangely sweet, almost floral warmth. The final, magical ingredient is ambergris, a waxy, grayish substance that is found, like a treasure, floating in the great southern oceans. A mysterious and fragrant gift from the great sperm whales. It smells of the sea, of old wood, and of a strange, sweet earthiness, and it has the almost magical property of being a fixative, a substance that holds the other scents and makes them last for days. These three treasures, these animal secrets from the farthest corners of the known world, are blended with the sweeter, more familiar notes of cinnamon, clove, and frankincense. The result is the perfume of a queen. It is a scent that is not merely pleasant. It is a statement of global power. It smells like a map of the world. You warm the small amount of pomade between your own fingers, and the heat releases its full, overwhelming power. You approach the queen. This is another of the morning's intimate rituals. You gently take her wrist and apply the pomade to her pulse points, where the warmth of her blood will release the scent all day. You apply it to her neck, behind her ears, and to the hollow of her throat. But the scenting does not stop at her skin. The perfume must infuse her very being. You take another small amount and rub it into the linen of her chemise, at the collar and the cuffs. You will later apply it to the inside of her gown and her gloves. She must not just wear the scent. She must become the scent. As a final layer, you take a fine, soft brush made of badger hair and dip it into the silver bowl of orris root powder. You lightly dust this powder over her shoulders and into the base of her hair, adding a final, sweet, powdery note to the heavier, musky aroma of the pomade. The war on scent is won. The clean linen chemise has done its defensive work, absorbing and trapping the queen's own mortal humors from within. And now, the powerful, exotic perfume creates an impenetrable fortress from without. She is now enveloped in a thick, complex, and almost visible cloud of fragrance. She no longer smells like an aging woman in a cold, damp palace. She smells like a goddess, a walking treasure chest, an exotic being from a world where the air itself is made of gold and spice. She is ready for the next and most poisonous layer of her construction. The queen is a column of clean, white linen, enveloped in a cloud of impossibly expensive perfume. The primary defenses are in place. The war against the natural state of her body has been won. Now begins the war against the truth of her face. You and the other ladies move with a practiced, solemn air. For this is the most important and most dangerous construction of the morning. This is the creation of the icon. You guide the queen back to her seat before the dressing table, where the polished bronze mirror waits to reflect the coming lie. You know the history that necessitates this ritual. You have heard the stories from the older ladies of the court, the whispers of the terrible year when the queen was struck down by the smallpox, a disease that killed thousands. It left her, their survivor queen, scarred and pitted. It was a brutal reminder of her own mortality, a flaw in the divine image of the monarch that could not be allowed to stand. And so the mask was born. What began as a fashion of the court, the desire for a pale, noble complexion, became for the queen a political necessity. Her white face is not just a sign of her aristocracy, it is a shield. It is the mask of youth, a defiant statement against the ravages of time and disease. It is the symbol of the Virgin Queen, a pure, timeless, and flawless monarch married only to her kingdom. It is a magnificent piece of propaganda, and it is your solemn duty to help her paint it every morning. But you also know the terrible secret price of this illusion. Isabel steps forward, carrying the small heavy pot of Venetian ceruse. The white lead paste, mixed with vinegar, is the only substance thick enough, opaque enough, to do the work required. It is the only paint that can completely conceal the truth of the Queen's damaged skin. You have seen, in these private moments, the devastating effect that years of applying this poison has had. The lead has created its own landscape of ruin, a grayish tinge to her natural skin, a network of fine, dry lines, a permanent irritation that can only be soothed by the application of more of the very substance that causes the affliction. It is a vicious, inescapable cycle. The more damage the ceruse does, the thicker the layer she needs to hide that damage. You are the keeper of this secret. You are one of the few people alive who knows the true face behind the mask. And this knowledge is a dangerous, heavy burden. You take a soft, clean piece of leather. You dip it into the thick, white, pungent paste, and you begin to paint. This is not the light, delicate application of a modern cosmetic. This is the work of a plasterer, of an artist creating a gessoed surface on a wooden panel before the real painting can begin. Your touch is gentle but firm. You apply the cold, heavy paste to the Queen's skin, spreading it in a smooth, even, and completely opaque layer. You are not enhancing her features. You are obliterating them. You work with a slow, meticulous focus. Your first task is to fill in the scars, the small pits and pockmarks left by the smallpox. You use the edge of the leather, carefully pressing the lead paste into these small imperfections, smoothing the surface over and over again, until the skin becomes a flawless, uniform plane. You are literally resurfacing the Queen. You apply the mask from the roots of her thinning red hair, across the vast, plucked expanse of her forehead, down over her cheeks, her nose, and her chin. You continue down her neck and across the exposed skin of her upper chest. The line must be perfect. Any place where the white mask ends and her true, aging, pinkish-gray skin begins would be a crack in the illusion, a betrayal of the entire artifice. The Queen sits perfectly still, her eyes closed, a statue enduring its own creation. You can only imagine the sensation for her. The cold, wet, heavy feeling of the lead paste being applied, the sharp, acidic smell of the vinegar, and then the slow, tightening, drying feeling as the mask sets into a hard, inflexible shell. It is a feeling she has endured almost every single day for decades. As you perform this intimate, dangerous work, you are filled with a strange mixture of profound pity and deep professional awe. You pity the aging, scarred woman who must subject herself to this daily poisoning simply to maintain the illusion of her divine authority. You see the deep lines of weariness around her eyes before you paint them over. You see the tremble of her thin lips, and you are reminded that beneath the crown and the title, she is a mortal woman, trapped in a role that demands she be a god. But you are also in awe of the sheer, indomitable will of the woman you serve. You are in awe of her commitment to this illusion, of her willingness to pay this terrible, daily price to project an image of unwavering strength and timeless majesty to the world. You are not just applying makeup. You are helping her to forge her primary weapon of state. Finally, the work is complete. You step back. The face you have been working on is gone. The tired, aging, and scarred woman has vanished. In her place is a smooth, white, and completely expressionless mask of pure divine authority. It is the face from the coins and the portraits. It is the face of Gloriana, the Virgin Queen. It is a masterpiece of political theater, a perfect and terrible illusion. And you know, with an absolute and chilling certainty, that the masterpiece is slowly, inexorably killing the artist. The white mask is complete. You have successfully plastered over the truth of the Queen's age and the scars of her past, creating a perfect, smooth, and unnervingly blank canvas. But it is the face of a statue, a ghost. It lacks the semblance of life, the necessary artistic touches that will transform it from a mere effigy into the vibrant icon of the Virgin Queen. Now, you must take up your palette and paint life back onto this poisonous visage. The philosophy of color at the Elizabethan court is a study in controlled artificial brilliance. A healthy, natural, rosy flush that spreads across the cheeks is the mark of a common country girl who has been chasing sheep in the wind. A noble woman's color is a different thing entirely. It must be a deliberate, precise, and perfectly placed statement of vitality, a stark and dramatic contrast to the almost death-like purity of her white skin. It is not a blush. It is an ornament. It is a jewel of pigment placed with an artist's care. You turn to the small table where the pots of color are laid out. This is your palette. You, as a senior lady of the bedchamber, are a master of its secrets, its promises, and its many dangers. You begin with the cheeks. For this, you use the safest and most modern of the Queen's cosmetics. Isabel, the younger maid, holds open a small, lacquered box. Inside is a fine, loose powder of a deep, rich, and beautiful carmine red. It is cochineal, a treasure from the New World, a pigment made from the dried and crushed bodies of thousands of tiny insects, harvested from the cacti of the Spanish Americas. To use it is a subtle political act, a sign that England, too, has a reach that extends to the far corners of the world. It is a beautiful color, and thankfully, a harmless one. You take a small, soft puff made from the downy feathers of a swan. You dip it into the crimson powder, tap off the excess, and approach your queen. The application must be perfect. You do not blend the color to create a soft, natural gradient. That is not the fashion. You gently press the puff high on the queen's cheekbone, creating a perfect, distinct, and unapologetic circle of pure, rosy color. You then repeat the process on the other cheek, ensuring the two circles are perfectly symmetrical, two identical coins of maidenly virtue placed upon the stark white of her face. The queen is now a beautiful, exquisite, and entirely artificial doll. But the cheeks are a mere prelude. The true, dangerous heart of the day's artistry is the painting of the lips. For this, you must turn to a different pot. It is a small, heavy stone jar, kept separate from the others. Inside is a powder of a red so brilliant, so pure, and so shockingly vibrant, it seems to hum with an energy of its own. It is the color of arterial blood and of rubies. It is vermilion, a pigment made from pure ground cinnabar. It is a sulfide of mercury. It is a deadly poison. You know its dangers. You have seen the woman at court, a great beauty, who after years of painting her lips with this very substance, was left with gums that were black and swollen, her breath a foul, metallic stench that no perfume could conquer. You know the stories of the trembling sickness, the madness that could follow. But you also know that no other substance on earth can produce a red of such power and vibrancy. The queen is a creature of power, and she demands a color that reflects it. The risk is the price of that power. With the tip of an ivory spatula, you take a tiny, almost infinitesimal pinch of the brilliant scarlet powder and place it in a small porcelain dish. You add a single drop of a sweet, fragrant oil and a small sliver of beeswax. You hold the dish over the flame of a candle until the wax melts, and then you mix the ingredients together with a small wooden stick, creating a thick, vibrant, and waxy red paste. You take up your finest brush, a tiny instrument with a handle of polished bone and a tip made from the impossibly fine hairs of a squirrel's tail. This is the work of a master illuminator, not a simple maid. "Your Majesty," you whisper. The queen, who has been sitting with her eyes closed, parts her lips slightly and becomes as still as the stone statues in her garden. You lean in, your own breath held tight in your chest. Your hand must be perfectly, absolutely steady. A single tremor, a single misplaced stroke, and you will ruin the perfect white foundation. A mistake that would take a quarter of an hour and a great deal of harsh scrubbing to correct. You dip the fine tip of the brush into the red paste, and, with a surgeon's precision, you begin to paint. You do not follow the natural line of the queen's thin, aging lips. You create a new mouth for her. You paint a perfect, sharp, and delicate Cupid's bow, making her mouth appear smaller, more youthful, and more perfectly formed. The vermilion paste is thick and slightly gritty, and it does not glide easily. You must build the color, stroke by careful stroke. The brilliant, shocking red stands out against the pure white of the ceruse, a slash of vibrant, dangerous life. As you work, you are overwhelmed by the intimacy and the strangeness of your task. You are painting the mouth of the most powerful monarch in Europe with a known poison. You are the keeper of her beauty, and you are the quiet, daily administrator of her slow, self-inflicted sickness. It is the most profound and most dangerous secret you will ever keep. When you are finished, you pull back. You have done it. The work is flawless. You hold up the bronze mirror once more. The transformation is now almost complete. The lifeless white statue of a moment ago is now animated. The two perfect, modest circles of blush on her cheeks speak of her virtue. But the sharp, brilliant, and deadly red of her lips speaks of her power, her passion, and her danger. You have created a face of perfect, beautiful contradiction. The queen stares at her reflection, her own expression unreadable beneath the layers of paint. She gives a small, satisfied purse of her newly created lips. The work is acceptable. The poisonous visage is complete. Your work on the queen's face is complete. It is a masterpiece of deception, a perfect poisonous mask of serene and timeless beauty. But the face, for all its power, is only one part of the iconic image. Now you must address the queen's famous crown of glory, her magnificent red gold hair. This, you know, is a process not of styling, but of pure architectural construction. The fiery, vibrant hair of the Tudor dynasty is a legend in itself. It is a symbol of their vitality, their passion, their almost otherworldly nature. The portraits of the queen that are sent across Europe all depict her with a magnificent, thick, and brilliantly red mane, often intricately curled and dressed. But you, one of the few women who inhabit the secret world of her bedchamber, know the truth. The legend is a lie. You stand behind the queen's chair. With a gentle, practiced hand, you untie the ribbons of her simple linen nightcap and remove it. The truth is revealed. The queen's natural hair is a sad, thin, and lifeless thing. It is a pale, faded red, more a memory of the famous color than the color itself, and it is shot through with the unmistakable, brittle white of old age. Decades of harsh treatments, of wearing heavy wigs and headdresses, and perhaps even the slow, creeping poison of the lead ceruse have taken their toll. Her hairline, which you so painstakingly plucked in her youth, has now receded on its own. It is the hair of an aging, tired woman. It is not the hair of a goddess, and so it must be erased. Your first task is to prepare the foundation. You take a stiff boar bristle brush and scrape the queen's thin hair back from her face, pulling it taut against her scalp. You then plait it into a series of small, tight, functional braids, which you pin flat against her head, creating a secure, uniform base. There is no gentleness in this process. It is a matter of pure, practical necessity. Over this, you tie a tight-fitting, plain white linen coif. A cap that covers all of her real hair, hiding the sad truth and creating a clean, smooth foundation for the grand illusion to come. Now, the true construction begins. Isabel, the younger maid, approaches, carrying the queen's hair with the reverence of a priest carrying a sacred relic. It is not on the queen's head. It is on a wooden block, a featureless mannequin head upon which the masterpiece has been prepared. This is the great wig. It is not a simple covering. It is a magnificent, complex, and heavy sculpture. It is built upon a stiffened framework of buckram and fine wire, which gives it its high, almost architectural shape. Into this framework, thousands of strands of real human hair have been painstakingly woven. The hair was bought at great expense from the fair-haired peasant girls of the countryside, and then subjected to an alchemical process of dyeing, using a mixture of saffron and other secret ingredients to achieve the perfect, iconic shade of Tudor red gold. But it is not just hair. It is a treasure chest. Woven into the intricate curls and rolls of the wig are dozens of small, perfect curls stitched directly onto the hair with fine silk thread. Fine, golden wires are twisted throughout, catching the light. It is a crown made not of cold metal, but of hair and jewels, a symbol of a power that is both natural and magnificent. You and Lady Shelton, the other senior lady, now perform the most delicate part of the operation. You each take one side of the heavy, elaborate wig, lifting it carefully from its wooden block. It is surprisingly heavy. The weight of the wire frame, the sheer volume of the hair, and the dozens of pearls and jewels adding up to a significant burden. You approach the queen, who sits perfectly still, her head bowed slightly. With a single, smooth, and perfectly coordinated movement, the two of you lower the great wig onto her head. It fits snugly over the linen coif, its edges perfectly aligned with the false, plucked hairline you created earlier. The tired, aging woman with the thin, graying hair is gone. She has been completely subsumed. But the wig is not yet secure. Its weight and height make it a precarious thing. Now comes the pinning. You take up a series of long, sharp, and formidable-looking steel pins, each one nearly 6 inches long. With a steady hand, you begin to anchor the wig to the queen's head. You drive the first pin through the buckram foundation of the wig, through the linen coif, and deep into the tightly pinned braids of her real hair beneath. The queen gives a small, almost imperceptible wince, but she does not complain. You continue the process, driving in a dozen or more of these long pins, creating a rigid, secure structure that joins the false hair to the real, the illusion to the woman. For a state occasion such as this, the wig alone is not enough. The final touch is the headdress. Isabel brings it forward on a velvet cushion. It is an atifet, a delicate, heart-shaped structure of fine wire, threaded with yet more pearls and a single magnificent ruby that will sit directly in the center of the queen's forehead. It is not a crown of state, but a smaller, more personal crown of beauty. You take the headdress and carefully position it atop the great mass of the wig. And then you pin it in place, using another set of finer, more decorative pins, their heads made of gold and pearl. The construction is finally complete. You step back to behold your work. The woman you began with this morning is gone. She has been utterly and completely erased. In her place sits Gloriana. Her head is a magnificent, impossible, and entirely artificial creation. It is a towering edifice of fiery red gold hair, glittering with a fortune in pearls and jewels. It is the face from the paintings, the icon that inspires both terror and devotion in the hearts of her subjects. It is a lie, a beautiful, powerful, and incredibly heavy lie, and it is your job, your secret and stressful art, to be its architect. The queen's face and head are now complete. She is a magnificent, impossible, and entirely artificial sculpture from the shoulders up, a vision of timeless majesty and power. But this carefully constructed icon cannot rest upon the soft, mortal, and yielding form of a simple human body. The body itself must be reshaped. It must be re-architected into a form as rigid, as powerful, and as unnatural as the mask she wears. Now begins the heavy, structural engineering of the Queen. You and Lady Shelton, your fellow senior lady-in-waiting, approach the Queen, who still stands in her simple linen chemise. The fire in the hearth roars, but the room is still cold, and you see the faint goosebumps on her pale skin. Your next task is to encase her in the rigid foundation of her public form. First comes the corset. It is not the soft, lacing bodice of a common woman. It is a pair of bodies, a formidable and armor-like garment. Isabel, the younger maid, brings it forward. It is made of multiple layers of thick, stiffened linen, and it is reinforced with long, vertical strips of whalebone, the flexible yet incredibly strong baleen from the mouths of the great whales. It is not designed to cinch the waist into a soft, feminine curve. It is designed to do something far more brutal, to completely flatten the torso, to erase the soft lines of the stomach and bust, and to create a long, stiff, perfectly conical shape from the shoulders down to the waist. You and Lady Shelton hold the heavy, stiff garment around the Queen's torso. It is a front and back piece, and your job is to lace it at the back. This is not a task of gentle tightening. It is a task of pure physical force. Pull, you command Isabel, in a low, firm voice. A young maid takes the thick cord and begins to pull it through the eyelets. You place your hands on the Queen's sides, steadying her. The Queen takes a deep breath, filling her lungs with air, for the last time she will be able to do so all day. Isabel pulls. The garment constricts. The Queen exhales sharply, a pained grunt that is muffled by the room's tapestries. The maid pulls again, her foot braced against the Queen's chair for leverage. You can see the flesh of the Queen's back being forced into the rigid shape. The goal is to bring the two back edges of the corset as close together as possible. It is a slow, grueling process. The Queen's body, her soft, aging flesh, is being ruthlessly compressed and reshaped by the unyielding power of the whalebone and stiffened fabric. When the lacing is as tight as it can possibly go, the final, crucial element is added. You take the busk. It is a long, flat, and rigid piece of polished ivory, a foot long and 2 inches wide. You slide this piece of ivory into a specially made pocket at the very front of the corset, running from the top of her chest down to her lower abdomen. This is the final enforcement. It makes the front of her torso completely, unbendingly flat and straight. She can no longer slouch. She can no longer bend at the waist. Her posture is now locked into a state of perfect, regal, and deeply uncomfortable straightness. She can only take small, shallow sips of air. She is encased. But the upper body is only half the construction. Now, the lower body must be given its own architectural form. Isabel brings forward the next piece of the puzzle, the farthingale. It is a strange, bell-shaped object, a great cage for the hips. It is a petticoat made of heavy canvas, but sewn into it are a series of great, circular hoops made of bent willow wands, whalebone, or thick, stiffened rope. These hoops start small at the waist and grow progressively, absurdly larger towards the floor. The queen steps into the center of this cage. You and Lady Shelton lift the heavy contraption up to her now rigid waist and tie it securely in place. The effect is immediate and dramatic. Where before there was the natural shape of a woman's hips and legs, there is now a vast, perfectly round, bell-like structure that holds her skirts out in a great, imposing circle. It is a piece of mobile architecture. It creates an intimidating, unbreachable space around the queen's person. No one can get too close to her. It also, makes the simple act of navigating the world a constant challenge. A narrow doorway, a crowded corridor, even the simple act of sitting down now becomes a complex logistical problem that must be managed by her ladies-in-waiting. Her freedom of movement has been completely sacrificed for this perfect, geometric, and fashionable silhouette. You step back and look at your queen. She is a strange, beautiful, and terrifying figure. She stands in her undergarments, a simple linen chemise, but her body has been transformed. From the waist up, she is a rigid, flattened cone. From the waist down, she is a great, wide, circular bell. Her natural, soft, and mortal form has been completely erased, hidden away inside this cage of bone and wood. You are no longer a simple lady-in-waiting. You are an engineer, a builder. You have used the most advanced technology of your age to transform a human body into a political symbol. You think of the phrase the scholars use, the body politic. Here before you, it is a literal truth. The queen's physical body has been reshaped to represent the rigidity, the power, and the unbending, untouchable nature of the state itself. Her gilded cage is a symbol of her kingdom's strength. The foundation of the icon is now built. It is time to hang the priceless tapestries upon it. The foundation is built. Your queen stands before you, a strange, geometric sculpture of linen, bone, and wood. Her soft, mortal body has been ruthlessly reshaped into the fashionable, idealized silhouette of a monarch. A long, rigid, conical torso, and a vast, bell-shaped cage for a skirt. She is a blank, architectural form. It is now time to hang the priceless tapestries upon this frame. It is time to dress the icon. You and Lady Shelton approach the great dark iron-bound chest that stands against the far wall. This is not the chest for everyday gowns. It is a vault. It contains the Queen's ceremonial armor, the magnificent and intimidating gowns worn only for the most important state occasions. You lift the heavy oak lid, and a faint, clean scent of cedar wood and dried herbs rises to meet you. Lying within, carefully folded and protected by sheets of fine linen, is the gown. To call it a gown is to do it a profound injustice. It is a treasure. It is a statement. It is the portable wealth of a nation, rendered in fabric, thread, and jewels. With the utmost care, the two of you lift it from the chest. The sheer, shocking weight of it is the first thing you notice. It is heavier than a knight's coat of mail. The maids hold it up, and it unfolds like a great dark banner. The base fabric is a deep, lustrous black silk velvet, a color the queen favors to represent her constancy and her seriousness. But the black velvet is almost completely obscured, serving only as a dark canvas for the magnificent, glittering declaration of power that has been stitched upon it. The entire surface of the gown, from the bodice to the hem, is a breathtaking, intricate web of embroidery, sewn not with common silk, but with thread made from real spun gold and silver. The threads form patterns of scrolling vines, Tudor roses, and strange, allegorical beasts, and sewn into this golden web are the true treasures, pearls. Not a simple string of pearls at the neck, but thousands of them. Great, luminous pearls from the Orient, stitched in clusters like shimmering flower heads, in long, flowing lines that trace the seams, in dense, heavy patterns on the sleeves and bodice. Each pearl is a tiny, perfect moon, a symbol of the queen's virgin purity, and a testament to a fortune so vast it is almost impossible to comprehend. And between the pearls, there are the jewels, rubies, the color of pigeon's blood, deep dark sapphires from the east, green emeralds, and the occasional priceless diamond, which glitters with a cold, hard fire in the candlelight. Each gemstone is set in a tiny clawed bezel of gold and then stitched securely to the heavy velvet. This is not a piece of clothing. It is a portable treasury. It is an instrument of statecraft, designed to awe, to intimidate, and to overwhelm any who stand before it. The process of dressing the queen in this magnificent heavy shell is a feat of engineering. It takes 4 of you. She stands as still as a statue, her arms held slightly out from her sides. You and Lady Shelton take the main body of the gown, and with a coordinated, grunting effort, you lift the great weight of it and lower it carefully over her head, guiding it down over the rigid, bell-shaped frame of the farthingale. The gown settles with a heavy, rustling sigh. The maids then begin the painstaking process of fastening it. There are hooks and eyes, dozens of them, running up the back, each one needing to be secured tightly. You then attach the great sleeves, separate pieces that are tied onto the bodice with silk ribbons. Finally, the last and most iconic piece is brought forward, the ruff. It is a massive, wheel-like creation of the finest, most transparent linen, starched to an almost paper-like stiffness, and arranged in a perfect, intricate figure-8 pattern. It is a great, white, architectural halo. You carefully place it around the queen's neck and tie the drawstrings at the back. It frames her painted, powdered face, isolating her head from her body, making her look even more like a strange, otherworldly, and untouchable icon. The construction is complete. You step back and look at your queen. The transformation is absolute and breathtaking. The tired, aging woman in the linen chemise is gone, buried deep within this glittering, magnificent, and impossibly heavy shell. She is no longer a person. She is a living idol, a dazzling, almost inhuman figure of light, power, and wealth. Her body itself has become a treasure chest, a walking declaration of the power and glory of England. She takes a single, shallow breath, the only kind her corseted ribs will allow. She can barely move. The weight of the gown alone is a crushing burden. Each step will be a slow, deliberate effort. She is a prisoner in a cage of her own magnificence. You see her through a professional lens. You are the engineer of this icon. You feel a surge of profound, artistic pride in the sheer, overwhelming spectacle you have helped to create. But you also see the truth. You see the immense, literal weight on her small shoulders. You see the way she holds her neck stiffly to support the ruff. You know the woman inside is trapped, uncomfortable, and in pain. The weight of her kingdom is not a metaphor. You have just finished clothing her in it. The great work is complete. The Queen of England stands in the center of her chamber, a magnificent, glittering, and almost entirely inhuman figure. The frail, aging woman of the dawn has been utterly subsumed, buried beneath a mountain of silk, velvet, pearls, and gold. The poisonous mask on her face and the great, fiery crown of her wig have completed the illusion. She is no longer a person. She is a symbol. She is a living icon. A walking treasure chest designed to project the absolute and unshakable power of her kingdom. But the construction is not truly finished until it has been inspected and approved by its primary architect, the Queen herself. "The mirror," she says, her voice slightly strained, muffled by the enormous, starched ruff that cages her head. You and Lady Shelton give a silent, coordinated nod. This is the final and most important ritual of the morning. You move to the great wooden chest where the royal looking glass is kept. It is not something that is left out. It is a treasure, a state secret, as valuable as any jewel in her collection. With great care, you lift it out. It is a heavy, ornate object. The mirror itself is a large, perfectly round disc of highly polished silver. A surface so bright and flawless, it is said to have been made by Italian artisans with secret alchemical knowledge. The frame is of silver gilt, intricately worked with the Tudor roses of her dynasty, and studded with pearls and small uncut gemstones. It is an object of immense power. It is not a modern mirror of perfect truthful glass. The polished silver surface does not offer a clear objective reality. Its reflection is softer, dimmer, with a warm, almost golden hue. It is a mirror that is inherently flattering. It is a mirror designed not to show a woman her true face, but to show a queen her own glory. You and Lady Shelton hold the heavy mirror aloft, positioning it before the queen so it catches the full light from the tall, narrow windows and the roaring fire. The queen stands perfectly still for a moment, her own face an impassive mask, and then she looks. The woman who looks back at her from the golden depths of the silver mirror is Gloriana. The dim, forgiving reflection works its magic. It softens the stark, deathly white of the lead makeup, giving it a serene, luminous glow. It deepens the crimson of her mercury lips, making them look like a sliver of polished ruby. It catches the thousands of pearls on her gown, making them shimmer with a soft, internal light. It makes the cold fire of the diamonds and the warm fire of the rubies glitter like captured stars. The reflection is not a woman. It is a living portrait, a masterpiece of light and shadow, a perfect and intimidating vision of majesty. The queen stares at this vision for a long, silent moment. You watch her face, trying to read her expression, but the thick mask of ceruse reveals nothing. You can only guess at the thoughts behind those intelligent, calculating eyes. What does she see? Does she see the tired, aging woman, her body aching, her lungs constrained by the corset, her head throbbing from the weight of the wig? Or does she see only the icon, the great Virgin Queen, the living symbol of England? You know, from years of this service, that she sees both. She is the artist and she is the subject. And this is her moment of final, critical assessment. Her gaze is not one of simple feminine vanity. It is the cold, hard, professional gaze of a general inspecting his armor before a great battle. She turns her head with a slow, deliberate, and almost imperceptible movement. The great ruff moving with her. She is checking the lines. She is assessing the projection of power. Does the gown hang correctly over the great wheel of the farthingale, creating a silhouette of pure, intimidating geometry? Is the wig perfectly centered, the great ruby of the headdress a perfect third eye of authority on her brow? Does the entire composition, this magnificent and painful illusion, achieve its desired effect? Does it project an image of a monarch who is not just a woman, but a force of nature, a being of unshakable power, eternal youth, and divine right? As you watch her, you see the subtle, almost invisible shift. The last vestiges of the private, mortal woman seem to recede. Her posture, already rigid from the corset, becomes even straighter. The set of her jaw, visible even beneath the paint, hardens. Her eyes, which were weary just a moment ago, now take on the sharp, intelligent, and deeply intimidating glint of the monarch. She is no longer inhabiting the costume. The costume is now inhabiting her. She is assuming the full weight and power of the icon in the mirror. She is becoming the reflection. After a long, silent eternity, she gives a single, sharp, and decisive nod. It is not a nod to you or the other ladies. It is a nod to herself, to the magnificent and terrible stranger in the mirror. The work is approved. The construction is a success. She turns away from the looking glass, the moment of private communion over. She is no longer Anne Boleyn's daughter, the survivor of 1,000 political plots, the aging woman with the scarred skin and the aching bones. She is Elizabeth, by the grace of God, Queen of England, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith. She is Gloriana, and she is ready for the Spanish ambassador. She is ready for war. The Queen turns from the mirror, her transformation complete. The private moment of self-assessment is over, and she is now fully inhabited by the public persona of the monarch. The weary, aging woman has been utterly vanquished, replaced by the indomitable and timeless icon of Gloriana. Her gaze is hard, her posture is unnaturally straight, and her entire being radiates an aura of immense, intimidating authority. It is time to move. It is time to present this magnificent and terrible creation to the world. You and the other 3 ladies of the Privy Chamber take your designated places around her. You are no longer her maids, her beauticians, her dressers. You are now her retinue, her immediate honor guard, the satellites that orbit the great glittering sun of Her Majesty. Your task is to facilitate her movement, to be the invisible engineers that keep this magnificent but cumbersome machine in motion. With a slight, almost imperceptible nod from the Queen, you move to the great chamber door. You open it, and the private, feminine world of the bedchamber gives way to the semi-public world of the Privy Chamber. The atmosphere changes instantly. Outside, a small select group of high-ranking officials and yeomen of the guard has been waiting in absolute silence. The moment the door opens and the Queen is revealed, every man in the antechamber drops to one knee, their heads bowed. The procession begins. It is not a simple walk. It is a slow, majestic, and physically grueling performance. The Queen takes the first step, a slow, glide-in motion that is dictated entirely by the architectural prison of her clothes. The sheer weight of her gown is the first great enemy. You have helped her dress. You know that the velvet, the silk, the thousands of pearls, the gemstones, and the gold and silver thread add up to a burden of more than 30 pounds. She is a small, aging woman carrying the weight of a young boy on her back. Each step is a feat of strength and endurance, a slow, deliberate movement, as if she is wading through deep, heavy water. Her second enemy is the farthingale. The great wheel-like cage beneath her skirts makes her unnaturally wide. As you begin the journey through the palace's long and often narrow corridors, this becomes a constant logistical challenge. You and another lady must walk just ahead of her, like pilots guiding a great ship into a narrow harbor, ensuring there is enough clearance on either side, moving a stray stool or table out of her path. When you approach a doorway, the Queen must turn her body almost completely sideways to pass through, her movements slow and awkward, a maneuver made even more difficult by the rigidity of her corset. And then there is the ruff. The great starched halo of lace that frames her head is so wide and so stiff that it forces her to keep her chin held high, her gaze fixed directly forward. She cannot look down. She cannot see the floor. She cannot see her own feet. She must walk the familiar corridors of her own palace with blind faith, trusting in the path and in you, her ladies, to guide her and to remove any unseen obstacles. Your role in this procession is one of constant, silent, and invisible support. You walk a precise 2 paces behind her and to her left. Your eyes are not on the Queen, but on her gown. You are the keeper of the train, the magnificent sweep of black velvet that trails behind her. You ensure that it does not snag on the rough edge of a stone block, that it does not twist or fold in an unseemly manner. You are a human rudder, guiding the magnificent vessel of Her Majesty through the treacherous waters of her own home. As you move through the series of antechambers that lead to the great presence chamber, the procession grows. The yeomen of the guard, take their places at the front and back, their ceremonial halberds held at a perfect, rigid angle. High-ranking officials fall in behind you, their own movements slow and respectful. The procession is a slow-moving river of power, and the queen is its glittering, inexorable source. The corridors are lined with lesser courtiers, men and women who do not have access to the privy chamber, but who have gathered for a precious glimpse of their monarch. As she passes, they bow low, they curtsy deeply, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. You see the effect she has on them. They do not see an aging woman struggling under the weight of a heavy dress. They see a goddess. They see a vision of almost unbearable majesty. Her slow, deliberate, and difficult movement is not perceived as weakness, but as a sign of her immense royal gravity. The illusion is working. The performance is a success. You are close enough to see the truth. You are close enough to see the tiny, almost invisible beads of sweat on her powdered upper lip, a result of the immense physical exertion. You are close enough to see the slight, almost imperceptible tremor in her hands, a sign of the strain of holding her body in such a rigid, unnatural posture. You know the cost of this magnificent spectacle. You know the pain and the suffering that is required to create this vision of effortless power. And your heart is filled with a strange mixture of awe for her strength and a deep, profound pity for her sacrifice. Finally, you reach the great carved double doors of the presence chamber. From within, you can hear the faint, high, and clear sound of trumpets. They are announcing her imminent arrival. The procession halts. The guards take their final positions. You and Lady Shelton step forward and perform one last, swift act of maintenance, giving a final, perfect arrangement to the Queen's great, jeweled train. The guards at the doors look to you. You give them a single, sharp nod. They pull the great doors open, revealing the packed, silent, and brilliantly lit throne room beyond. The Queen pauses at the threshold for a single, dramatic, and breathtaking moment. She is a glittering, inhuman icon, framed by the great doorway, ready to receive the worship and the judgment of the world. You stand for a breath at the Queen's back as she pauses on the threshold of the presence chamber. It is a moment of pure, calculated theater. The great double doors have been thrown open, and before her lies the glittering, crowded heart of her kingdom. For a single silent moment, she allows her court to behold the magnificent, almost blinding, vision you have spent all morning constructing. Then she takes the first, slow, majestic step inside. The room is a masterpiece of royal propaganda. It is a vast, long hall, its high-vaulted ceiling a dark heaven of carved and gilded oak. The walls are completely hidden behind enormous, vibrant tapestries depicting the great mythological heroes and the legendary history of England. The light is brilliant, a dazzling glare from a dozen great tiered chandeliers, each holding 100 pure beeswax candles, their combined light reflecting off the polished wood floors. The silver platters of the serving tables, and the thousands of jewels worn by the assembled courtiers. At the far end of the hall, on a high carpeted dais, sits the throne, a great carved chair of state, empty and waiting. The chamber is packed with the most powerful people in the kingdom. There are hundreds of them, a dense, glittering sea of humanity. Dukes, earls, knights, ambassadors, and their ladies, all dressed in their finest, most ostentatious velvets, silks, and furs. As the Queen enters, a sudden, profound silence falls, and this entire glittering forest of nobility sinks to the ground in a single, rustling, unified wave of bows and curtsies. But as you step into the room behind your Queen, you are met not by the sight, but by the smell. It is an assault, a thick, complex, and overwhelmingly powerful wave of scent that is the true, unspoken reality of the Elizabethan court. The first and most foundational layer is the smell of humanity itself. In a world where bathing is a rare and dangerous event, the scent of hundreds of unwashed, sweating bodies packed into a single, warm and enclosed space is an inescapable reality. It is a thick, animalistic, and slightly sour smell that forms the base note of the entire olfactory experience. Mingled with this is the smell of poor dental health, the faint, sickly sweet scent of decaying teeth, and the sour aroma of wine-soaked breath, a problem that afflicts the noble and the commoner alike. Then there is the smell of the room itself. The floor is covered in a thick layer of sweet rushes, but you know that beneath the fragrant herbal top notes lies a damp, musty, and slowly decaying reality. For weeks, these rushes have been a repository for the refuse of courtly life. Spilled wine, dropped scraps of meat, the occasional waste from a lapdog. It is the smell of a beautiful surface hiding a slow, inevitable rot. And over all of this hangs the constant, greasy, and acrid haze of wood smoke from the two great fireplaces that roar at either end of the hall. This is the foul, pungent, and deeply human truth of the court. And upon this foundation is layered the desperate, magnificent defense against it. The perfume. Every single person in this room, from the lowest squire to the highest duke, is wearing a powerful perfume. But it is not a symphony of pleasant aromas. It is a chaotic, clashing, and brutal war of scents. The air is a thick, almost visible fog of competing fragrances. You can smell the heavy, animalistic power of musk, the strange, sweet fecal notes of civet, the rich, spicy aroma of clove and cinnamon, and the cloying sweetness of rosewater. Each nobleman and lady is enveloped in their own personal cloud of scent, their own fragrant shield against the stench of their neighbors. The combined effect is not one of beauty, but of a kind of overwhelming, almost suffocating sensory violence. It is a room where the air itself is a lie, a place where 100 powerful perfumes are desperately trying to shout down the simple, honest truth of 1,000 unpleasant smells. You, of course, are accustomed to this. You navigate this thick, soupy atmosphere with a professional's indifference. You focus on your duty, on the magnificent figure of your queen, as she begins her slow, majestic progress through this gauntlet of sights and smells. Her own perfume, the magnificent and incredibly expensive blend you applied this morning, acts as her royal vanguard. It is so potent, so rich, and so unique that it seems to cut a path through the lesser, clashing scents of her courtiers. It is the dominant fragrance in the room, an olfactory declaration of her supreme status. She glides through the parting sea of her court. Her face is a serene, white mask, betraying no hint of discomfort, no reaction to the overwhelming heat and the suffocating air. Her progress is slow, each step a deliberate, weighted movement. She is not a woman walking. She is a celestial body moving through its foreordained orbit. Finally, she reaches the dais. She ascends the 3 carpeted steps, her movements impossibly graceful in the immensely heavy gown. She turns, and with a slow, rustling sigh of velvet and pearls, she sits upon her throne. She is a single, perfect, glittering icon, looking out over the sea of her bowing, perfumed, and silently judging court. The air before her is a testament to the central paradox of her world, a place of breathtaking visual beauty, of almost unimaginable wealth, built upon a foundation of filth, decay, and a desperate, fragrant battle to deny the simple, unpleasant reality of the human body. The stage is now set. The queen is on her throne, and the Spanish ambassador, a man from an equally perfumed but rival court, may now approach. The queen is on her throne. She is the still, silent, and glittering center of a universe of her own creation. She is magnificent. She is terrifying. And now, the reason for this entire day of painful, meticulous, and poisonous construction is about to enter the stage. You stand in your designated place, a few steps behind and to the left of the throne, a position of immense honor and even greater anxiety. From here, you are a privileged, invisible witness. The Lord Chamberlain, the master of all court ceremony, takes his position at the foot of the dais. He strikes his tall, white staff of office on the polished oak floor. The sound, a single hard, authoritative thump, echoes through the now silent hall. His Excellency, the herald's voice booms, a great, rolling announcement that fills the chamber. Don Guzman de Silva, ambassador to His Most Catholic Majesty, Philip, King of Spain, of the Indies, and of all the Spains. The great double doors at the far end of the hall are pulled open, and a single figure enters. It is the Spanish ambassador. He is the living embodiment of England's great and powerful rival. And he is a stark, almost shocking contrast to the glittering, colorful chaos of the English court. He is dressed in the severe, elegant, and almost entirely black fashion of the Spanish Habsburgs. A black velvet doublet, black silk hose, a short black cape. The only touch of color is the brilliant, pristine white of his enormous, starched ruff and cuffs. His beard is dark and perfectly trimmed to a sharp point. He moves with a slow, deliberate, and almost reptilian grace. He is not a peacock like the English lords. He is a black raven, a creature of solemnity, of intellect, and of immense, understated power. The entire court watches in absolute silence as he begins his long, slow walk up the length of the presence chamber toward the throne. This is not the walk of a man seeking favor. It is the walk of a man who represents a global empire, a man who is not easily impressed. And his eyes, you see, are fixed with an unwavering analytical intensity upon your queen. This is the duel. It is not a duel of swords, but of images. A battle of perception fought across the 60 yards of this great perfumed room. From your vantage point, you see what the ambassador sees. He sees a goddess. He sees a monarch who is not merely a woman, but an icon, a living constellation of jewels and gold. He sees the famous, unnaturally white skin, a symbol of a bloodline so pure it has never known a day of labor. He sees the fiery red gold hair, a magnificent crown of authority. He sees the glittering, almost blinding display of pearls and rubies on her gown, a silent but deafening testament to the wealth of her kingdom. He sees an image of timeless majesty, of a queen who is beyond the reach of age or decay. But you, the keeper of the secrets, you see the truth behind the spectacle. You know that the flawless white skin is a thick, poisonous mask of lead, hiding the scars of smallpox and the ravages of age. You know that the magnificent red hair is a wig, pinned painfully to the thin, graying locks beneath. You know that the serene, impassive expression is a mask of its own, held in place by a will of iron and hiding a body that is aching, constricted by a corset, and slowly being poisoned by its own beautifying agents. The ambassador's gaze is not one of simple admiration. It is a professional's gaze. He is a spy as much as he is a diplomat. His mind, you know, is a cold, sharp ledger. He is noting every detail, assessing, calculating. He is looking for a flaw, a crack in the magnificent facade, a trembling hand, a flicker of weariness in the eyes, a single out-of-place jewel on the gown. Any tiny imperfection will be noted and interpreted as a sign of weakness, not in the woman, but in the kingdom she represents. Your own heart is pounding with a frantic internal anxiety. You are the chief engineer of this illusion, and this is the moment of its ultimate test. Your eyes dart over your own work, a frantic, silent quality check. Is the wig perfectly straight? Is there a smudge of crimson on the white mask? Has the great ruff begun to wilt in the heat of the room? A single tiny flaw in your morning's work could have international consequences. The weight of this diplomatic encounter rests not just on the Queen's shoulders, but on yours. The ambassador continues his slow, inexorable approach. The only sound in the vast hall is the soft, deliberate scuff of his black velvet shoes on the floor, and the heavy, expensive rustle of the Queen's own gown as she takes a single, shallow breath. He finally reaches the foot of the dais. He stops. He stands for a moment, his dark, intelligent eyes locked with the Queen's. It is a silent battle of wills, a meeting of two empires. Then he performs a deep, slow, and perfectly correct bow, a gesture that is respectful but not subservient. He holds it for a long moment. The Queen, from her throne, does not smile. She simply watches him, and then she gives a single, slight, almost imperceptible nod of her magnificent, jewel-encrusted head. It is the gesture of a god acknowledging a mortal. It is an acceptance of his tribute. It is a declaration of her own supreme authority. The silent, visual war is over. The magnificent, intimidating, and entirely false image you have created has done its work. It has held. You let out a slow, silent breath you did not realize you had been holding. The illusion is intact. Now, the battle of words may begin. The Spanish ambassador rises from his bow, his face a mask of diplomatic neutrality. The silent, visual battle is over. The Queen's magnificent, intimidating image has held the field. Now the battle of words begins. You stand in your designated place behind the throne, a silent, ornamental figure, your hands clasped, your gaze demurely fixed on the floor. But your ears are sharp. This is where the true business of the day is done. Your Majesty, the ambassador begins. His voice smooth, his Latin as perfect and as polished as his black silk doublet. He delivers the formal, flowery, and entirely meaningless greetings from his master, King Philip. He speaks of his king's hope for continued peace, for prosperous trade, for the friendship between their two great Christian kingdoms. You know, as everyone in this room knows, that every word is a lie. King Philip is your queen's greatest rival, a man who sees her as an illegitimate heretic occupying a throne that is not rightfully hers. His true hope is not for peace, but for her downfall. This entire conversation is a delicate, deadly dance, a verbal chess match, where the pieces are words of flattery and the prize is a glimpse of the opponent's true intentions. The Queen, from her throne, listens with an expression of serene, almost bored attentiveness. She is a master of this game. When he is finished, she replies not in English, but in flawless, courtly Italian, a subtle but clear demonstration that her own learning is in no way inferior to his. Her voice is clear and strong, showing no sign of the physical frailty you know she feels. "We are gladdened to hear of our dear cousin of Spain's good health," she says, her tone gracious, but with a sharp, cold edge of irony that only the most astute listener would detect. "And we are always pleased to discuss the bonds of peace, for it is a peace that England, in its strength, is more than capable of maintaining." The conversation continues, a slow, careful exchange of pleasantries and veiled threats. But your attention is not on the great matters of state. Your focus, as always, is on the small, intimate, and potentially disastrous details of the Queen herself. You are the guardian of the illusion, and from your vantage point, you are close enough to see the cracks. The ambassador offers a particularly florid compliment. comparing the queen's wisdom to that of Solomon. The queen, in response, gives a small, regal smile. From the far end of the hall, this smile is a vision of serene, confident majesty. But you are standing only a few feet behind her. You see the truth. You see the immense, disciplined effort that goes into creating this simple expression. You see the way she carefully keeps her lips pressed together, a tight, controlled curve that does not, under any circumstances, reveal what lies behind them. You see the faint, almost invisible network of tiny cracks that this small muscular effort creates in the thick, brittle, white enamel of her makeup, like fissures in a perfect porcelain mask. And because of your proximity, you are aware of the most dangerous secret of all. The ambassador stands a respectful 10 feet from the dais, his own powerful perfume creating a scented barrier. But you are in the queen's immediate orbit, and beneath the magnificent, overpowering cloud of her musk and ambergris perfume, you can detect another scent. It is a faint, sickly sweet, and deeply unpleasant odor. It is the smell of dental decay. You hold your own breath, a surge of pure, cold panic in your chest. You pray that the ambassador, with his bloodhound's nose for weakness, cannot detect it. You pray that the thick, fragrant fog of 100 competing perfumes in the hall is enough to mask this one tiny, horrifying truth. This secret, the secret of the queen's rotting teeth and the foul breath they produce, is a matter of state. It is a secret that you and the other ladies of the bedchamber are sworn, by your lives and your honor, to protect. You see the other signs of the immense physical strain she is under, signs that are invisible to the rest of the court. You see the slight, almost imperceptible tremor in her bejeweled fingers as she gestures. You see the way her back is held in a state of unnatural, unbending rigidity by the iron-like grip of her corset, and you know she has not taken a full, deep breath in hours. During a long monologue from the ambassador, you see Lady Shelton, on the other side of the throne, take a single discreet step forward and with a fine linen cloth, gently dab a single tiny bead of sweat from the queen's powdered temple. It is a performance of almost unimaginable endurance, where even as you are terrified by her physical fragility, you are awed by the sheer, indomitable power of her mind. For while her body is a carefully managed and failing ruin, her intellect is a fortress. She listens to the ambassador's long, winding sentences, her head tilted, her expression never changing. And when he is finished, she responds, her answers sharp, witty, and often devastatingly insightful. She parries his veiled threats with her own. She counters his diplomatic probes with clever, evasive answers. She is in complete and absolute command of the conversation. You are witnessing the central, magnificent paradox of your queen. She is an aging, physically frail woman in constant pain, encased in a painful and poisonous costume. And she is, at the same time, the most brilliant and formidable political mind in all of Europe. Her physical body is a carefully constructed lie, but the power of her intellect is a genuine and terrifying truth. The audience finally draws to a close. The queen gives a slight, almost invisible nod of her head. It is the signal of dismissal. The ambassador, his face revealing nothing of what he has learned, performs another deep, formal bow. He turns and begins his long, slow retreat down the length of the hall. You watch him go, and you let out a slow, silent breath you did not realize you had been holding. The conversation was a success. The queen was magnificent. And the secrets, the secret of the teeth, the secret of the breath, the secret of the pain have remained secret. The great, beautiful, and fragile illusion of Gloriana has held for one more day. The great carved doors of the presence chamber swing shut behind the Spanish ambassador. The sound a soft, final thud that echoes in the suddenly quiet room. The duel is over. The foreign power has withdrawn. And in the silent, charged aftermath, the victor remains enthroned, a glittering, motionless statue of triumph. The queen does not relax. Not yet. The performance is not complete until the audience has fully dispersed. She remains on her throne, her back perfectly straight, her hands resting lightly on the carved arms of the chair, her face the same serene, impenetrable mask of majesty. She continues to project an aura of effortless, almost bored authority, as if the tense, high-stakes diplomatic encounter she has just concluded was a matter of no more consequence to her than a game of cards. She is allowing her court to witness her in her moment of victory, to see their Gloriana, unshaken and supreme. But the court itself exhales, a great, collective, and almost inaudible sigh of relief seems to pass through the hundreds of assembled lords and ladies. The rigid, formal silence shatters, replaced by a low, excited murmur of conversation. Courtiers who had been standing like statues now shift their weight, turning to their neighbors, their faces breaking into smiles of relief and pride. You can hear the whispered dissections of the encounter beginning all around you. "Did you see his face when she answered him in flawless Italian?" one lord murmurs to another. "He fought to trap her, and she made him look a fool." "Her Majesty has never looked more powerful," a lady whispers to her companion. The Spaniard came expecting to find a weak, old woman. He found a goddess. You stand at your post, a silent, unobtrusive shadow behind the throne, and you listen to these whispers, and you feel a fierce, almost dangerous surge of professional pride. This victory is not just the Queen's. In a small, secret, and deeply significant way, it is yours. The goddess they are all marveling at is a creation, a magnificent, powerful, and almost holy illusion that you and a handful of other trusted women constructed this morning out of linen, whalebone, lead, mercury, and a mountain of jewels and fabric. The ambassador did not see a weak old woman because you had spent hours painstakingly hiding her. He saw a timeless icon because you had painted one onto her face. He was intimidated by her wealth because you had literally sewn the wealth of the kingdom onto her gown. Her victory was won with her sharp mind and her silver tongue. But the battlefield was prepared by your hands. You are the invisible engineer of this great political triumph. And in this moment, you feel a bond of loyalty to the woman on the throne that is as fierce and as unbending as the corset that encases her. After allowing her court to bask in her reflected glory for a few calculated minutes, the Queen, without turning her head, makes a small, almost invisible gesture with the fingers of her right hand. It is a subtle, flicking motion, a gesture that no one in the hall would ever notice, but you are trained to see it. It is the signal you have been waiting for. It means, it is done. I am exhausted. Get me out of here. You immediately catch the eye of the Lord Chamberlain, who is standing at the foot of the dais. You give him a single, slight, and almost imperceptible nod. He understands. The public part of the day is officially over. He strikes his staff of office on the floor once more. Her Majesty is fatigued, he announces, his voice booming through the hall. She will retire to her chambers. Once more, the entire glittering assembly sinks into a deep, rustling bow. The Queen rises from her throne. The movement is slow, a feat of immense, controlled effort against the crushing weight of her gown. She stands for a moment, her gaze sweeping across the sea of her bowing courtiers one last time, a silent, powerful dismissal. Then she turns. The great procession begins to reform, in reverse. The yeomen of the guard take their places. You and the other ladies fall into your designated positions behind her, ready to manage the great, heavy train of her gown. The trumpets sound a final triumphant fanfare. The queen begins her slow, majestic, and agonizingly difficult walk out of the presence chamber. The illusion has held. The battle has been won. The Spanish ambassador will return to his master, King Philip, with a report not of a frail, aging, and vulnerable queen, but of a magnificent, confident, and almost immortal goddess, a monarch at the very height of her power. The entire painful and poisonous ordeal of the day has served its purpose. You feel a deep, weary sense of triumph, but as you lift the heavy pearl-encrusted train of her gown and begin to follow her out of the hall, you are acutely aware of the truth. The magnificent icon you are following is still a mortal woman, trapped in a beautiful, agonizing prison of her own making. And the immense, almost unbearable cost of this great political victory is a price that she, and she alone, must continue to pay every single day. The great doors of the presence chamber close behind you, and the magnificent, overwhelming spectacle of the court is shut away. You are back in the relative quiet and shadow of the palace's private corridors. The public performance is over. And the moment the last prying eye is gone, the great, glittering icon of the queen begins the slow, painful process of becoming a woman again. The change is subtle at first. The iron-straight posture, which she held for hours on the throne, begins to soften. You see her shoulders slump, a barely perceptible but deeply significant surrender to the immense weight of her gown. She takes a step, and it is not the slow, majestic glide of before, but a heavier, more weary tread. She reaches out a hand, and for a moment, lets her fingers trail along the cold stone of the wall. A small, unconscious gesture of a body seeking support. You and the other ladies of the chamber immediately close ranks around her. You are no longer her ornamental retinue. You are her honor guard and her support structure. You, being the closest, move to her side. "Your Majesty," you murmur, your voice low. She says nothing, but she allows herself to lean, ever so slightly, on your arm. You can feel the immense weight of her, not just the physical pounds of the velvet and jewels. The bone-deep weight of her profound exhaustion. The long, silent journey back to her private apartments is the reverse of the triumphant procession from this morning. It is a retreat, a slow, painful, and deeply weary march away from the battlefield. The few guards and officials you pass in the corridors bow low, their eyes still full of the magnificent vision from the throne room. They do not see what you see. They do not feel the tremor of exhaustion that runs through the queen's body. They see the icon. You are escorting the tired, mortal woman who is trapped inside it. You finally reach the sanctuary of her bedchamber. The moment the heavy oak door is closed and the great iron bolt is shot across it, sealing you off from the rest of the world, the transformation is immediate and shocking. Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the divine monarch, vanishes with a low, shuddering groan of pure, unadulterated misery. The queen stumbles the last few feet to her great chair by the fire and collapses into it. The magnificent, jewel-encrusted gown groans and rustles around her. She does not sit like a queen. She slumps like a weary farmer at the end of a long harvest day. The serene, impassive mask she has worn all day cracks, replaced by a grimace of pain and irritation. "Take this thing off me," she rasps, her voice a low, angry growl as she tugs at the great, stiff ruff at her neck. It is a cage, a gilded, starched, and suffocating cage. Your work begins again, but it is the work of deconstruction. You and Lady Shelton move with a swift, practiced efficiency. First, the crown of hair. You remove the pearl and ruby headdress, its beauty now seeming almost mocking. Then you begin the careful, painstaking process of removing the dozen long, sharp spiel pins that anchor the great wig to her head. As the last pin comes free, you lift the magnificent, heavy edifice of red gold hair away. The relief for her is instantaneous and profound. She lets out a long, deep sigh, a sound of pure physical liberation, and she rolls her head on her neck, trying to work out the stiff, aching muscles. Beneath the wig, her own thin, graying hair is matted with sweat, a sad and secret truth that only you are permitted to witness. The ruff is untied and removed next. Then the heavy ropes of pearls, the brooches, the rings. Each item removed is a weight lifted. A piece of the public armor being stripped away. She sits there, a strange, half-dismantled creature, her face still a perfect poisonous white mask, but her head now that of a simple, tired old woman. The contrast is grotesque and deeply pitiful. "The Spanish dog," she mutters, staring into the fire. "He has the eyes of a ferret. He was not looking at me. He was counting the pearls on my sleeves." Her voice is no longer the clear, ringing tone of a monarch, but the weary, bitter voice of a woman who has spent her entire life being appraised, judged, and valued like a piece of property. You and the other ladies do not speak. You simply listen. This is part of your duty, to be the silent, invisible witnesses to the Queen's exhaustion, to her private frustrations, to the immense human cost of being a living symbol. You look at this powerful, difficult, and profoundly lonely woman, and your heart is filled with a fierce, protective loyalty. The world sees the magnificent illusion, the flawless icon. Only you see the pain, the poison, and the sheer, indomitable will that is required to create it, day after agonizing day. And here in the warm, private, and lonely confines of her chamber, we leave her, an icon being unmade, a goddess slowly, painfully becoming a mortal woman again, as her maids begin the long process of unlacing her and scrubbing the poisons from her face. The story of Elizabeth's horrifying hygiene is the story of a paradox. It is the story of a woman who sacrificed her own body, her teeth, her skin, her hair, at the altar of her own public image. The iconic, almost divine figure of the Virgin Queen that we see in the portraits was a deliberate, masterful, and incredibly costly illusion, built every day out of lead, mercury, wigs, and a will of iron. In our own modern world, we too have become masters of creating the perfect public image. We filter our photos, we curate our lives, we present a glittering, successful, and happy version of ourselves to the world on our screens. We too hide the messy, the painful, and the unhygienic realities of our own lives behind a beautiful digital mask. The story of Elizabeth is a strange and distant mirror. It reminds us of the immense, often invisible, and sometimes poisonous effort that goes into maintaining a perfect facade. And now, as our story ends, perhaps it is time to let our own public masks fall away, just for tonight. Time to find rest, not in the perfection of an image, but in the simple, honest, and imperfect reality of our own being. Time to sleep.